1. So the current main cast of this story will come from my time in high school. The names have been changed for privacy. Me, Proteco Beard. Milady, AC. My former best friend, Pitang Ubunaki. Milady's best friend, Samurai. Intro. Now for some background information on myself. I'll try to spare all the nitty-gritty details, and I'll start off by explaining that I come from a broken home. When I was 7, my parents got a divorce. Now, while most divorces are bad, I would soon come to learn how bad it was in compared to others. My mother would on multiple occasions say that my siblings and I were mistakes and didn't love us. On a number of occasions, she would try to get one of my sisters thrown into a juvenile mental facility. Safe to say, she was incredibly abusive and off her rocker. She took all my dad's money and demanded child support from him even though we stayed with him, which the judge sided and agreed with. Unfortunately, as the saying goes, I had one parent leave and another one stay. My dad, however much he cared for us kids, was no better than my mother, having grown up and looking back on it. He always put down my sisters for being women, essentially having a mindset that women in some way were inferior. While he would never blatantly call them any of the derogatory words, he would make comments that the way they dressed or acted was similar to sluts and whores. Like, really, Dad, your own daughters? My older brother, I should note I'm the youngest of 4 with my brother, and one of my older sisters being twins, was the crown jewel of my dad's eye. He loved sports and was really good at them, being quarterback for his high school for 3 years until breaking his thumb in senior year. It didn't help that, yes, he was attractive and built. I would come to see him as a Chad and an enemy, but that would be more because of my father. You see, here I am, 5 years younger and half his size, yet I wasn't able to keep up with my brother in sports. My dad would often comment that I was weak and lazy. When I began to struggle and fail in school, he just called me a disappointment. I would learn that after high school, when I finally got glasses, that I had been needing them since elementary. Thanks, Dad. Love ya. Now, the reason I'm putting this out in the first place is I wanted to shed some light on the fact that, while not all of them have similar backgrounds, many neckbeards come from 2 branches. Those that come from a sense of entitlement and have never been told what they're doing was wrong, and were often enabled, and then those like myself who were simply just not lucky enough to actually have a chance to grow, in a sense, mentally. Their lives in a way being stunted, so as a way of coping turned to various outlets as a way of escaping, often anime, video games, comics, etc., flocking with one another to any form of gratification. However, they both lead to very similar trains of thought, the only distinction being that while the first doesn't seem to grow out of their ways, the latter seems to change, when they finally have enough of people telling them that what they're doing is wrong. But as we all know, that's a painfully slow process. Sorry about the rant there, now on to the story. So this first story would take place about 8 or 9 years ago during my freshman year in high school. Now, as I've mentioned, my life up to that point was not a very pretty one, and as a way of escaping that, I had begun to dive headfirst, hands open, into anime and manga. My favorites at the time were Gundam, Naruto, Breaker, New Waves, and SAO, Sword Art Online. I even developed a passion for Yu-Gi-Oh! At the time. Still have it. Now, seeing as I kept changing schools, due to my dad working for the school district as a para, and would move based on where he went, I didn't have many friends, so in my free time at home would often be spent reading the newest issues of my favorite comics or manga online, or rewatching episodes. When it finally came time to go to high school, my grandparents actually decided to have me and one of my older sisters enrolled in a Catholic high school. It was strange, but they said that the public schools weren't really a good place for us. And my sister insisted. She had close friends there, so off to Catholic school I went. Now yes, there was a uniform policy, and boy did little 14-year-old me lose his shit when he saw all the girls wearing schoolgirl outfits, basically. It was just like Toradora. Now, scared little me was cautious at first, seeing as I was new. I didn't know anybody. However, I would later learn that everybody else had basically known each other from kindergarten, as they had all come from one of 3 Catholic churches, each with their own school attached to it, making me the only new kid in the whole school. It wouldn't be till the 3rd day after receiving my classes I would stumble upon a group of kids that were talking about Naruto. Now, while there was 4 of them, 2 of them aren't really important per se. I didn't really mention them in the casting. However, one, that's called Gollum, was a sickly built-looking kid who looked like the Lord of the Rings character. Now, I will say for most of high school, he was obsessed with the military, much like you'd find in various subreddits, and actually is capable of earning the title Military Beard. However, a year after high school, he would enlist and be deployed. So after putting his money where his mouth was for years, he's earned my respect. Now, let's focus on the last one. This dandruff-cursed, always wearing a black trench coat, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master was none other than Pitang Obanaki. He earned this name from the other students after his constant obsession with Naruto became the sole feature about him. Now, I wasn't smart enough at the time to be wary of these guys with all their sex jokes and other, let's say, risky comments. I was just having been drafted into what my now friends and I would call the Beard Force. I was just happy to have a place, and friends with similar interests, everyone else be damned. Now Pitang would go on to take me under his wing, as he called it, and teach me the ways of women. Oh God, how I cringe now, ever thinking this salty spittoon of an always snowy forecast of a man would know anything about women. Now, when I said these guys had bad hygiene and smell, I mean it. I didn't notice at first because my hygiene was poor as well. Now, not because I just didn't care or claimed oils clean the body like them, but actually because my family and I were going on our 3rd, what later would become 7 months of not having water at our home, due to not being able to afford it. So we would visit our grandparents twice a week to shower if we could. However, after the first week of school, my gym class would be pushed to first period because they needed more students in it. It's here I would be able to shower every day after class and begin to maintain a stable hygiene. This would actually help me out a lot, and begin to make more friends as I would finally be able to understand what all the looks were about towards us. When I would comment to them about it, they would often throw what I now realize are BS science facts about how natural oils clean the body over time, and that the products we use now just destroy the body. Nah, fam, you just don't want to take a shower. With this new schedule change, my English class was moved to 2nd hour. This is where I would meet the milady of this tale, AC. Now, while I will go on to say that yes, there were a lot of attractive and cute girls at my school, I was never interested in them too much in a romantic way, because I was too embarrassed to share them my life. But she was different. She caught my eye real quick, and as she looked at me and sat down in front of me and smiled and said, "Hey, you're Protagobeard, right? I'm AC, nice to meet you." Now you would think something as simple as that would be easy for me to answer, but as I looked into those beautiful green eyes, my mind shut down faster than a city power outage. For some reason, I still have no clue to this day. The first thing out of my mouth was, "What it is, mamacita?" Now, while she laughed it off and continued to speak to me, trying to just make conversation, I was so embarrassed that my mind jumped ship and abandoned my body for the duration of the class. To this day, I have no idea what she was talking about. I just remember her lips moving and me nodding and saying a lot of generic yes and no's. Over the next couple of days, I would learn that we didn't have a lot in common at first. She didn't play video games, wasn't big into comics, and actually didn't watch any anime, however. She did love Pikachu. Now, my ladies and gentle sirs, that was enough for me to spring off. Attempting to narrow the distance between us, I started drawing small comics on my notes of Pikachu that she actually quite enjoyed. Over time, I would share AMVs, anime music videos, of Pokemon that I found that used her favorite songs. She would then ask me to find videos of specific songs she liked, and if there was anything for them. Now, while it was hard, I would find some various anime that used her style of music, which were more feely and chill vibes. This turned out to be a good success, and over time we had moved from Pikachu being the only thing remotely in common to just talking about music and other things outside our school lives. I couldn't believe things were going my way. However, this wouldn't be a Neckbeard story if there wasn't cringe involved, and it's finally time we start. The homecoming dance was coming up, and I was excited as hell. Little known fact about me that only my siblings and a few friends know about is I have a passion for dance. I'm talking b-boy breakdancing, some formal dancing, the works. I actually made an effort to memorize and perform the same moves from movies like Step Up and Stomp the Yard. It was time to show my moves, and I was happy and ready for it. even more excited because I wanted to take AC. While I personally felt like I was the only one with feelings, I figured we were close enough friends to ask. Now, Petang caught wind of this and decided he'd help me win her over. The fact that anybody was taking an interest in me and wanted to help me win over a girl I really liked, I thought it was a blessing. Boy, was I wrong. Petang actually suggested that I write her not a poem, but a rap song, and sing it to her in a pseudo-homecoming proposal. Now, when I say I had my doubts about this plan, I'm totally lying. My dumbass actually thought, "That's a great idea! Women love rappers!" Now, Petang helped me write the lyrics, and we threw in some Office and Pokemon references. Now, listeners, you might think that perhaps we would go over this song and maybe memorize it. Nope, we wrote it in Class 1 period, and attempted to ask her out during lunch. We waited until about halfway through the lunch, when most everybody was either done eating, or too distracted to care. It was time to act. Now, I am thankful Petang decided to come with me, but I think it was more because he was happy to see his prize song be used, and wanted to have front row seats to the action. Now, as much as I wanted to bestow the masterpiece on here, I decided not to, as having changed the names it wouldn't rhyme, and just didn't seem like a fit to me. That said, about the fourth line when I was rapping Kodak with "You know dat," AC's best friend at the time burst into laughter so loud it caused me to stop in my tracks. A lot of people started to look over and see what was going on. "My God, did you actually even think this through, bro?" she shouted out. "I can't believe you actually thought something like this would work." She then pointed. "Look at her, she's red as hell." She pointed to AC. "Look, God, I'm sorry for all of you." She finished before snorting really loud. Now, I was embarrassed, and that simple bit actually cut pretty deep. She basically cut me down with laughter. This would get her the nickname Samurai for the rest of the story.
"God, what a fucking bitch!"
Petang suddenly spoke up, pulling me away.
"Man, forget these hoes. They don't appreciate honorable, nice guys like us."
And yes, he actually said that. I didn't care at the time because, like I said, I was hurt and was actually hoping Samurai would choke on her mashed potatoes with all that laughter. I glanced over only once to look back at AC, who simply used sign language and signed the words, "Thank you, Jay." Before hitting me with a double whammy of confusion, she signed "I love you" to me right before following it up with a "fuck off." She later explained that it was just to tease the air around us. After this scenario, I would go on to the dance, and I would dance the hell out of it. I got into an actual dance battle with a few of the girls on the dance team, who took outside classes. I also spent a lot of time in the middle of a dance circle. I had redeemed my blunder at lunch. However, Samurai was no fan of mine and absolutely hated Petang for calling her a bitch. She would always try to stop AC's and I's conversations, and even try to get me to leave her and AC alone. But my feelings for AC were so strong at this point, and her attempts to get me to leave them alone only solidified my friendship with Petang and Gollum even more. So much so that we decided it would probably be best if we try and break up their friendship. Dun dun dun. Two, the cast. Lalo, mutual friend of JD. Liv, girlfriend at the time. Viv, Liv's best friend. JD, the Neckbeard. So back in the day, I dated this girl for a better part of 2 years. It wasn't anything serious, just some puppy love, you know? Anyways, before I started dating her, I spoke to Lalo about her. See, me and Lalo were pretty comfortable discussing who we had feelings for, and all that. But we always made it a habit to never discuss it around JD, for good reason. Every time I had a crush on a fellow female student, immediately he would ask them out. It was almost as if he wanted to find out who I liked, so he could try and win them over before I made a move. He was not only a neckbeard, but he was also a nice guy. "Why don't these bitches love me, dude, I swear? I can treat them better than any of those dicks can," he would retort in class. Now is a good time to mention that Lalo was a friend of mine, but I also was really good friends with the popular kids, the Chads, if you will. He hated their guts for no reason. It's funny, though, because one of the guys in that group was his cousin, his own flesh and blood. He would talk so much shit about them, assuming I would get offended. I did defend them the best I could, and Lalo didn't have a problem with them, but JD was very confident that they would turn me to the dark side. Anyways, I told Lalo I kind of got a thing for her, and most of the times I tell him about a crush, he's usually like, hopefully she feels the same way. But with Liv, his eyes lit up and immediately said, dude, ask her out, do it. And that's when I knew something was up. I could bore you with how I came to ask her out. It was very, very, very cheesy and cringe-worthy, so I'd rather not remember it. But that's a story for another time. Anyways, the school finds out we're dating and everyone approves. Not to toot my own horn, but I was the third smartest kid in the school. The second was Liv, and the first was Viv. Wild, I know. So when word spreads, JD is absolutely livid and doesn't want to talk to me at all. Every time I walk up to Lalo and him, JD walks away ignoring me. Honestly, he was a bit of an annoyance during that time period, as he used to snitch on me for every little joke. And eventually told the assistant principal, who I had a good relationship with, about it and almost ruined it. Thankfully, I was able to fix things with her, as she helped me with a letter of recommendation for a college program like 2 years later. Anyways, point is, him ignoring me was a blessing. He literally only talked to Lalo. So I told Lalo that it wasn't personal, but I won't be spending much time with him since I didn't want JD to sit alone. It wasn't until after everything that I found out he was mad because I started dating Liv, who he apparently had a huge crush on. Lalo understood my sentiment, and I spent more time with the Chads and Liv. I still talk to Lalo from time to time, and he tells me that JD is just shit-talking the fuck out of me. Eventually, he starts these rumors that I'm verbally abusive to Liv, and that I'm controlling her, which are both very, very, very untrue. I rarely yell at people and didn't use profanity around Liv, as she didn't like me talking like that. We also had a very open relationship, in the sense that I was able to talk to other girls as friends, and even have a female best friend, and she was allowed to do the same. The rumor got so bad that I got called to the office and had to meet with the counselor and principal on what healthy relationships look like. You could imagine my embarrassment when I had to sit there and be taught about relationships with two people I've never disclosed any info to. I found out later Liv had the same talk, but they gave her a domestic abuse hotline number. It was wild, man. Fast forward to our second year dating, and we decided to take a small break. We were both really stressed out about school, so we agreed a break could help us get our lives together. We were on a break for about a month. As soon as JD found out we broke up, he immediately tried to win Liv over. He would write letters, poems, bring her gifts. Now I didn't really know what to do, but I was obviously pissed off. I thought he was my boy, so for him to turn around and just try that sneaky shit had me mad at him. Liv turned down every gift and gesture and reminded him that she only viewed him as a friend. The final straw was when he asked her to the school dance with an original dance routine. I know. It was definitely cringe galore. Liv had had enough and told him no yet again. He then proceeded to call her names, and I was very close to getting into a shouting match with him, but Lalo held me back. I go to the dance and so does Liv. We didn't go to the dance together, but by the end of the night we had gotten close yet again. 2 or 3 days later we got back together. JD was so annoyed it wasn't even funny. He would scoff and leave the vicinity anytime me or Liv came around. Eventually another rumor about me started up again. So Liv and Viv were like the best friends. They practically did everything together. Apparently Liv and Viv were having problems because allegedly, anytime Viv wanted to hang out with Liv, she would ditch her and hang with me. This was another bull lie, as I rarely went anywhere with her outside of school, as her parents were super strict. So instead of asking JD, I asked Viv, since me and her were cool. I don't remember the exact convo, but I legit asked her, "Did you tell JD any of this?" And Viv replied with, "Dude, I've never even spoken to that kid once." Now I ignored this rumor, since this was a smaller one, and people knew he liked to lie, so I was stressing, until it happened. Apparently he started texting Liv and told her all this nasty pervy shit, asking her for pictures and whatnot, and going on and on about how I am a beta male, and not a true man. Granted, I was in my emo phase, so I dressed emo eyeliner, nail polish, so he called me a rather rude homosexual slur, and other slurs like that. When she refused, he started calling her names and talking about her family situation, which she's very open about. I remember that he said something along the lines of, "I understand why your dad hates your guts so much," which hurt her a lot as she struggled forming a relationship with her dad and having a good connection with him. Eventually, she blocked him and called me crying. Now, I am a peaceful person, but when she showed me the screenshots, boy oh boy, was I angry. He didn't come to school the next day, and neither did Liv, so I told Lalo to let him know that I was going to mess him up if I catch him outside of school. I will admit I acted out poorly and irrationally, but at the time it seemed right. The next day he shows up in his trench coat, the classic fedora and sunglasses in the middle of October. I told him to meet me at Le Spot after school, and he agreed. He said something along the lines of, "I'll fight you for her honor." And I just replied with a, yeah, shut the fuck up. Le Spot is the place where the students would go to handle business. If you hear Le Spot in anyone's convo, you know something's going down. Liv hadn't come back to school yet as she felt uncomfortable to see him, and it's understandable. She constantly told me not to fight him, but again, I didn't listen. So it's like 30 minutes after school, and I head to the spot. Not a lot of people show up, since it was a secluded area, but it was a small crowd. He's there posing like a legit anime villain, holding his glasses up, one hand in the pocket, head down. I had to stop myself from laughing. We get ready and the fight starts. Immediately he does this weird judo roll thing. It was more like a barrel roll. But he stayed on his knees, so I just kicked him in the face and he fell back. I then let him get up, and he legit thinks it's an anime fight, yelling, "Wait till you see my true power!" and runs at me. All I do is move to the right, extend my leg, and boom, he hits the floor again, but splashed into a puddle. At this point the crowd is laughing. It was at that moment where I felt like a dick and remembered that Liv didn't want that to happen, so I just walked up to him, tried to help him up, but in true anime villain fashion, he pushes my hand away and rambles on about how he'll get me next time. He eventually became a total neckbeard and moved away. Me and Liv later broke up, but are on good terms and laugh about it sometimes. 3. So throughout middle school and high school, I knew this one neckbeard that was in our friend group we'll just call Tom. Disclaimer, by the way, he had a therapist his mom made him see, but he had no diagnosis for any mental issues, other than anxiety, which he milked dry for all the excuses he could get from it. I forgot who originally brought him into our friend circle, but we were all band kids, which is how we all met. Before I go further, let me describe this kid. While he didn't have an actual neckbeard because he couldn't actually grow facial hair, he had everything else a neckbeard would. He was not only fat, no offense to fat people, but this guy was morbidly obese to the point where we were in a pool during a band trip. He floated effortlessly because he had that much fat on him. And if you think I'm being mean by making fun of this guy for his weight, just know that he would be the first to make fun of others for their weight by unironically telling you that you need to put down the fork and stop going to McDonald's. He also had a bowl cut for the longest time until he tried bleaching it white to look like a character from Tokyo Ghoul. And he went prematurely bald at 18. And he stank so bad, and to make matters worse, Tom would never wear his shoes and throw a fit if you tried to make him. Therefore, he was normally walking around the halls barefoot while holding his shoes, and always fighting with people when they told him to put his shoes on. Now on to some highlights from my time knowing him, because it's not his wretched stench or looks that made everyone hate him. It was his attitude. So first off, this guy was obsessed with Japan, and for some reason thought he was better than everyone else because of it. He pretended he could speak the language and pretended he was an expert on their culture, often virtue signaling toward Asians about how great they were in comparison to everyone else just because they're Asian, despite being absolutely racist towards the Hispanic and especially black kids. He bought a Nintendo Famicom on one of our band trips, yet purposely forgot his uniform pants so he didn't have to do anything on the trip, and wastes a bunch of money on having things shipped from overseas, including Japanese manga, which he couldn't even read. Our high school also had an anime club, which he showed up to once, and when the president asked if anyone had any questions, he raised his hand, insulted everyone in the room for being fake fans, and left, never showing up to another meeting. He was also a total snob in general. Imagine a cartoonishly over-the-top snob, and have them inhale helium. And that's Tom. He'd always start fights by trying to look smart by making someone else look stupid for no reason, only it usually backfired. The point where I decided to never talk to him again was where he started to spread rumors about me doing whippets and being a retard who'll never amount to anything. His words. This stemmed from a brief joke about him not getting his homework done, which caused him to say,
"It's easy to get your homework done when you're in the retard class,"
under his breath, and walked away, trying to tune me out when I tried confronting him on that. He also thought that he was the best saxophone player in the whole school because he was the only one who got to play bassoon out of all of us, conveniently leaving out the part where he's the only one who auditioned for bassoon in the first place. And the fact that he was a really bad bassoonist who never actually performed in concerts with one of us for one reason or another, like forgetting his pants as part of the uniform on a band trip, or losing his sheet music the day of the concert. Tom was also a total snob toward anyone who disagreed with him. We had a short journal, in which we all had to write out how the world was going to end and read it out loud. Tom took this opportunity to basically say that either because we accept homosexuality, that everyone is going to turn gay, and everyone would die of AIDS with no babies being born to repopulate the earth. He's an atheist too, by the way. And then played the victim when a lesbian classmate got mad at him at one point and said to me, smugly,
"She's just being hysterical and intolerant of others, isn't she?"
After he was clearly losing the fight, which I responded with, "You know I'm pansexual, Tom, shut up and sit down." Which he didn't sit down, resulting in him being suspended after it escalated into him cussing out the teacher. He later got mad at me for not taking his side, and then tried justifying his homophobia by saying,
"I have no problem with gay people. I just think it's wrong if they have sex. Why can't gay people just act normal?"
Yes, you heard that right. He thinks it's reasonable for all gay people to live their lives as virgins, or pretend to be straight. If you think this is bad, though, you should hear his rants about how everyone who isn't atheist like him is an idiot. While incel isn't a word we used back then, he had a ton of beliefs about women that would be unmistakably incel rhetoric, usually relating to how all women are whores or are emotional, opinions which he not only couldn't keep to himself, but also was used to insult any woman that got mad at him, including our gym teacher. It's been so bad that he straight up insults rape victims and made fun of a pregnant teen to her face once. Unlike most incels, however, he claimed to be asexual, and liked to see himself as having ascended to a higher form of consciousness because of it, while the rest of us were just slaves to sexual desire. Tom wasn't just a pretentious weeb, though, he was also lazy as hell. I had gym class with this guy for 3 years. Keep in mind, too, that he had no health problems that kept him from being held to the same standard as anyone else. We had kids who couldn't. He was just a couch potato. He always managed to lose his uniform, never participated in anything, not even stretches. And if someone got stuck with him on their team, would just stand there and not help, and would then start insulting people when they got mad at him. The pacer tests were like this for him. They'd start, and he'd walk straight for the area you'd walk around to cool off once you're out. Sit his fat ass down and play his DS. He's so out of shape that during the fire drill he wouldn't even walk all the way to the meeting area, threw a fit, and started cussing out the gym teachers like a 5-year-old at Target. Besides that, if he wanted to go home for any reason throughout the school day, he'd text his mom and she'd seriously pick him up. And he'd do this whenever convenient. If you're wondering why I put up with him for so long, honestly, it's because I couldn't just not be friends with one member of our friend circle and not cause drama. He ended up isolating himself from the rest of us when we moved on to jazz band and marching band, and left him alone in regular symphony band, and refused the others' offers to do things with us because if it was outside his interests, it was stupid. He then started homeschooling due to the vague excuse of anxiety, and we never saw him again, and none of us miss him. 4. I've been thinking of posting for a while now and telling this story about the first neckbeard I have ever encountered in my life. I didn't realize he was a neckbeard for a long time, but eventually it hit me. We are a group of 4, 2 guys, 2 girls. It consists of me, my 2 closest friends, let's call the guy A and the girl L, and the neckbeard. NB is a typical weeb. has kind of bad hygiene and doesn't have a lot of friends. He's apparently also into hentai, which I found out because one time we went out with friends. He just randomly started showing us lolly hentai on his phone. I wish I was joking. He also makes lots of inappropriate comments towards me and Elle, and lots of other girls as well, and was sometimes a bit creepy, but we just shrugged it off. That was until NB started to crush on Elle, and he really wasn't discreet about it. He would constantly demand physical contact, and would try to make her feel bad if she told him that she wasn't comfortable with that. But we didn't cut him off because 1, he was still good friends with A, and 2, we felt bad for him. Like I said, he doesn't have a lot of friends. Some time went by. NB got less clingy towards Al, and everything seemed to be normal. That was until last year on Halloween, when we all decided to go out and drink. We would all sleep over at A's place after that, which seemed to be the perfect opportunity for NB to get uncomfortably clingy toward me and Al again. The night was fun. We got drunk and walked around town cracking a few jokes here and there, and were overall having a good time. NB suddenly started complaining about how much his life sucked, how he would never get a girlfriend, and that everyone hates him. We all assured him that we didn't hate him, and that there was someone out there for him. He then turned to me and Elle and asked for a hug, but after Elle told him that she didn't want to hug him, he suddenly started to talk about how he would kill himself because no one loves him. He then asked me, and I hugged him, hoping he would be happy then. But oh boy, was I wrong. He spent the rest of the evening being really clingy towards me, trying to make me feel bad for him. We went to A's place after some time because it was getting really cold, and we just wanted to play his PS4 for a bit. After some time, we all went to bed. Me and Elle had just changed into more comfortable clothes, when NB started comparing our butts and boobs, like loudly making comments about it. At this point, I bet even A thought that NB was being creepy. We tried to ignore it and were just minding our business, until NB turned to me. I can't remember the conversation word by word, but it went something like this.
Hey, can I ask you something?
Sure.
You know that I'll most likely never touch a girl or get a girlfriend, right?
Don't say that. There's someone for you out there, I'm sure.
Can I touch your boobs?
He then proceeded to pull €5 out of his bag and said that he could even pay me. Honestly, I didn't know how to react. I just went to bed after that, and of course NB tried to get me into bed with him by telling me he was feeling lonely and just wanted to cuddle. I told him that I wasn't getting into bed with him, and that was the end of it. I didn't really talk to him the next morning as I wasn't feeling well. We didn't talk about this night since. 5. Just a quick little bit of backstory. I am a 23-year-old gay drag queen. I started drag when I was 15, and have been performing in my aunt's club since I started. She's awesome. I also have severe anxiety, which my drag persona helps a lot with, and I tend to dress in drag in everyday life when the anxiety is too much for me to handle. This will be more relevant in later installments. Also, I'm not going to disclose my drag name here, as it'd probably give me away to any that know me in real life. Anyway, on to the story. This whole ordeal started when I was a 19-year-old college student. I met Neckbeards Sr., NB Sr., when I was studying art in college. The majority of people in my class were around 20 to 26. I was the youngest in the class due to skipping a year at college and going straight to the advanced course. NB Sr. was the oldest in the class, well into his 40s, which is not a bad thing because more mature people attend college all the time, and good on them. He was the stereotypical neckbeard, gross beard, a severe lack of personal hygiene, trench coat, anime shirts, you know the drill. Anyways, everyone tended to avoid him due to the overpowering smell and his general creep factor. How I wish I'd done the same. We had been paired up for a group project whilst I was absent due to personal reasons, and when I got back, the only person other than me who didn't have a partner was NB Sr. Now this is where I made the ultimate mistake. I approached the neckbeard first. Shocking, I know, but I felt bad for him. He looked so sad. So instead of working on my own like the professor suggested, I decided to work with NB Sr. Big mistake. Now I know y'all are probably thinking that I'm an idiot and that I brought this on myself, but in my defense, He looked really sad that no one wanted to work with him, and he had been very vocal about his depression, so I figured maybe having a project partner would help. Don't hate me. For this project, we were required to create a character each, sort of an alter ego, and design their look and personality, then create a comic with our partner and have our characters interact. NB Senior decided to design an anime character, inspired by Naruto or something, and I decided to just design my drag persona. My professor always found her pretty intriguing. It was here, though, that things started to go to shit. We'd managed to have a pretty decent conversation about music, comic books, etc. I learned he has 2 sons in their 20s, and I can promise y'all that they take after their dad. But that's a different story for another day. Then NB Senior caught sight of my drawing.
What's that?
She's my character.
Yeah, I can see that. Why is she a she?
Because I want her to be. The same way that yours is an anime guy.
I get it. You're a trap, right?
No, though I do drag when I'm not studying. My inner voice is screaming at me to STFU. But you gotta forgive a guy for being anxious. His eyes lit up at this.
Really? That's amazing. I always thought those ladyboys were cute. My sons got me into RuPaul's Drag Race a couple of years back, and I love it.
I know this isn't something the stereotypical neckbeards are into, so I was confused, until it became apparent that he only watched it to creep on the queens. That's cool, I guess. Now, I'm too lazy to write the entire conversation, but he basically spent an hour and a half telling me of all the queens he liked, and what he wanted to do to them. Meanwhile, I tried to prevent myself from vomiting. He even got out his phone and showed me his waifu pillow, he called it Yoko, and proceeded to tell me how I would probably look like her in drag if my drawing was anything to go by. They looked nothing alike, but okay. Also, what grown man in his 40s has a freaking waifu pillow? After what seemed like an eternity, class was finally over, and I started to rush to get my stuff packed away, partly because I wanted to run away from this creep, and partly because I had a show 2 hours later and had to get ready. I made my escape, but not before our professor reminded all groups to get each other's contact information, so we could work on the task. Thanks a lot, Teach. The next few weeks go by, and NB Senior starts following me everywhere, and will text and call me non-stop. We had already finished the project. We settled in a manga-style comic, though not the hentai one that he repeatedly begged me to do. But he still kept making up excuses to talk to me. He kept badgering me about what clubs I perform at, because he really wants to see his baby girl perform. Gross, I know. Whenever I tried to distance myself from him, he started texting me about how it was making his depression worse, and how he was feeling suicidal. I always got guilt-tripped into talking him again. He would also make any excuse to grab me, hug me, peck my cheek, or hold my hands, which I was not okay with, but I was severely socially anxious and was scared of upsetting him. I thought it couldn't get worse, so boy was I wrong. So one night my aunt decided to pick me up from college and take me straight to the club to save me the 2 buses and 20-minute walk. Everything was going great. I get dragged up, my makeup skills are fairly decent, and I tend to pass as a girl when I'm in drag. Being a feminine guy tends to help quite a lot too. I go on stage and do a couple songs and wander around, interacting with the audience when it happens. Halfway through my cover of Nobody's Supposed to Be Here, dance remix obviously, I feel someone try to slip money into the waistband of my skirt. Bitch, that ain't on. I turn to get a look at the culprit, and see NB Senior sitting in front of me with a shit-eating grin on his face. He had waited outside the college to see me getting into my aunt's car, and proceeded to follow me to the club, creepy AF. Now, if you haven't been to a drag show, then you might not be aware, but the biggest rule, in our club at least, is that you never touch the queens without their permission. Though that should apply to everyone at all times. I freeze for a second, but then regain my composure and take the money, handing it back to him. I smile and say something like, "I think you're in the wrong club, sugar. I'm no stripper." To which he looks at me shocked and then turns away angry. His anger didn't last long. Now, it's part of my act to interact with the audience and even flirt with them from time to time, and tonight was no different. However, when I would talk to someone, avoiding NB Senior for obvious reasons, he would slap my butt for talking to strangers, yuck, and would constantly try to pull me into his lap. He was successful a couple of times, and even took the chance to feel my tuck and tell me how impressive it was, and how he could barely tell I was a boy, which grossed me out to no end. But what really made me almost lose my cool was when he started calling me Yoko. Out loud enough for me to hear. Really, bitch? You think I'm a replacement for your creepy-ass waifu pillow? I had to keep it professional and did my best to avoid him. Honestly, if I was out of drag, I'd have had a full-on panic attack by this point. But my alter ego is a lot better at dealing with idiots than me, thank God. Thankfully, by some miracle, one of the older queens noticed how uncomfortable he was making me, and took a chance during the break to confront him and tell him he ought to leave. Bear in mind, out of drag she looks like a bodybuilder, 6 foot and muscular AF. So she's already intimidating, but those heels made her look even scarier with the extra height. Eventually he left with his tail between his legs. I don't know what she said to him, I'm just glad he left. He apologized and begged me to forgive him in the weeks following me. And as you can tell from the need for different installments, I stupidly forgave him. But that's the story for another day, y'all. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Neckbeards in the Wild, number 40, I think. Almost at 39 there. Nope, number 40, okay. There we go. And thank you very much to everyone who allowed me to use their stories in this video. The weekend is upon us once again, and I plan on doing nothing if I can. Well, we get these videos wrapped up. I'll spend the next few hours making those. And I will stream, of course, on Sunday. I will stream. About the same time, between 10 or 11 UK time. We're probably starting a new game. We might even do a bit of VR, I don't know. We'll see. The problem is a lot of the VR games have got shooting and things in them, and I've kind of got my self-imposed no shooty games on stream kind of thing. Unless it's phasers. Phasers don't count. But a new game, because we finished Sherlock Holmes last week. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.